Clearwater Mayor speaks on the aftermath of Hurricane Milton. Subscribe now to the Famous in Focus channel for live updates on Hurricane Milton and other important news. Good evening, I'm Itamar Cardoso. Today we bring you urgent updates on the devastating impact of Hurricane Milton, which continues to wreak havoc across Florida. Earlier today, Milton made landfall near Sarasota as a Category 3 storm, with winds reaching up to 193 kilometers per hour. These monstrous winds ripped roofs off buildings, tore down trees, and sent massive waves crashing into coastal areas. The Tropicana field, which was being used as a shelter, had its roof torn off by Milton's powerful gusts. But that's not all. Across the state, dozens of tornadoes have formed, turning an already dangerous situation into something even more life-threatening. Lucey County, multiple fatalities have been reported, and rescue workers are battling to pull survivors from overturned vehicles and collapsed buildings. Here in Tampa, where I am right now, the situation is extremely concerning. We are in the heart of the city and already feeling the devastating effects of Hurricane Milton just after it hit the coast. The streets are littered with debris. Trees have been uprooted, signs ripped off buildings, and the fierce wind is hurling objects across the streets. At the moment, I am in a reinforced parking garage, but from here I can clearly see the signs of destruction below. The biggest fear is that, in addition to these terrifying winds, up to 30 centimeters of rain is forecast, which could overwhelm the drainage system, causing floods across the city. Recently, we were here covering Hurricane Helen, and many of the neighborhoods that were badly affected by floods during that storm are now once again under threat. This time, authorities were more aggressive in issuing evacuation orders, and 13,000 people are currently in evacuation shelters across Tampa. However, some residents have chosen not to leave. Emergency services are struggling to respond to 911 calls, and until the winds die down, many are left on their own, without immediate assistance. In Fort Myers, the situation is equally dire. The storm surge has caused large amounts of water to flood streets and homes. Right now, I am seeing the water rise to levels that are almost engulfing a shed, and if the surge continues, it will be completely swept away. Residents are facing flooding in areas where it was never expected. The impact is so fast and severe that local authorities have few options but to wait for the storm to pass, and this could take until early morning. Cities like Daytona Beach and New Smyrna are expected to feel the full force of the hurricane winds. Many areas are already without power, and in the coming hours, thousands more homes are expected to be left in the dark. In Tampa Bay, where I am right now, forecasts predict 45 centimeters of rain, which could lead to a critical situation. In Orlando, things are also starting to take a turn for the worse. Milton is on its way, and we are already feeling the increase in wind speeds and heavy rain. Local authorities have taken preventive measures, draining lakes, and opening parking garages for residents to shelter their vehicles from potential flooding. The worst of this storm is expected to hit Orlando during the night, so we are keeping a close eye on the next few hours. In Sarasota, shortly after Milton made landfall, winds reached speeds of up to 164 kilometers per hour. I'm here myself, and the conditions changed dramatically within minutes. The Sarasota-Bradenton Airport recorded extreme wind gusts. The biggest fear here is the storm surge, which is already threatening entire neighborhoods. We are without power, and many, including myself, are using headlamps to move around. Milton has generated dozens of tornadoes, and more could form throughout the night. The devastation here is overwhelming. In some areas, electricity may take days to be restored, and the threat of further destruction is still very real. Hurricane Milton is a powerful Category 3 storm that made landfall near Sarasota, Florida, with wind speeds reaching up to 193 kilometers per hour, about 120 miles per hour. This makes it one of the most dangerous and destructive storms to hit the Gulf Coast in recent years. The consequences of Hurricane Milton are severe and widespread. Destructive winds. These strong winds have ripped off roofs, toppled trees, and torn down signs and structures across the state. The sheer force of the wind has caused extensive damage to homes, businesses, and public buildings. Storm surge. The hurricane has brought a dangerous storm surge, with water levels rising up to 2 meters and 70 centimeters, around 9 feet, flooding coastal areas and sweeping away vehicles, sheds, and other property. Heavy rainfall. The storm has dumped up to 45 centimeters, about 18 inches, of rain in some areas, causing widespread flooding, particularly in low-lying regions like Tampa Bay. Tornadoes. In addition to the main storm, Milton has spawned more than 30 tornadoes, adding to the destruction. These tornadoes have ripped through neighborhoods, causing further damage and increasing the risk to residents. Power outages. Over 2 million people are without power as a result of the storm, and many areas are expected to remain without electricity for days. This complicates rescue efforts and increases the risk for those who stayed behind. The aftermath of Hurricane Milton is expected to be long-lasting, with extensive rebuilding required, especially in hard-hit areas like Sarasota, Tampa, and Fort Myers. The combination of wind damage, flooding, and tornadoes has left Florida in a state of emergency, with emergency responders overwhelmed and still assessing the full extent of the destruction. Hurricane Milton. Destruction spreads across Florida. This hurricane, a true Category 3 monster, continues to devastate Florida, with winds reaching 193 kilometers per hour. More than 30 tornadoes have already been confirmed, causing even more chaos and destruction. 2 million people are already without power, and the damage continues to spread from Tampa to Orlando and Jacksonville. Here in Sarasota, residents like Calvin Bryant, who has lived here since 1957, decided not to evacuate, despite warnings from authorities. The threat of tornadoes in southern Florida is leaving people even more anxious, and many have been caught off guard by this relentless storm, which shows no signs of weakening. The worst may be yet to come. As Milton moves across the state, emergency responders are overwhelmed, and the full extent of the damage is still being assessed. The state of emergency remains, with the possibility of more tornadoes, flooding, and strong winds in the coming hours. Your action can make a difference. If you are in the affected areas, stay safe and follow all official instructions. Have you ever experienced a situation like this before? How do you think Florida can recover from this catastrophe? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to the Famous and Focus channel for continued updates on Hurricane Milton and other major events. Together, we can stay informed and protected. Clearwater Mayor speaks on the aftermath of Hurricane Milton. Subscribe now to the Famous and Focus channel for live updates on Hurricane Milton and other important news.